Summer 1943. Camp Crossville, Tennessee. A German prisoner stared at the dark, bubbling drink in his hand, almost hypnotized by it. He had never seen anything like it. After 2 years in North Africa, living on hard biscuits and ersatz coffee, this cold, sweet drink called Coca-Cola felt unreal. It cost 5 cents at the camp canteen. The guards told him that American kids bought the same bottle with their weekly allowance. That summer, across prison camps in the United States, more than 370,000 German POWs were confronting a truth that shattered everything Nazi propaganda had taught them about American weakness. They found a country where ice cream wasn't a luxury but an everyday dessert, where soft drinks were part of a normal meal, and where candy bars were so common that guards sometimes handed them out for free. These simple treats, foods most German children had never tasted, did more than satisfy hunger. They quietly dismantled the myth of German sacrifice and superiority. They exposed the reality of American abundance. Sugar, chocolate, and ice cream revealed an industrial capacity far beyond anything Germany could match. What many Germans had been told was noble wartime suffering now looked like avoidable hardship imposed by their own leaders. What began as surprise would grow into something deeper, a complete psychological shift. The collapse of the Afrika Korps in Tunisia in May 1943 had brought about 250,000 German and Italian soldiers into Allied hands. These men were experienced desert fighters. They had pushed the British all the way to Egypt under Rommel, and they expected brutal treatment as prisoners. Nazi propaganda had warned them about American cruelty and starvation. Instead, within hours of surrender, they were handed American K rations. American soldiers often grumbled about these field rations, but to German troops who had survived months of shortages, they felt like banquet meals. Crackers, processed cheese, chocolate, fruit bars, instant coffee, sugar tablets, cigarettes, items that had all but disappeared from German supplies long before. At the processing camps in North Africa, the shock grew even stronger. Military records show that the U.S. Army served captured soldiers pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, and real milk. These foods hadn't been seen in German military kitchens for years. Feeding the enemy, wasn't just policy. It became the first step in a long, unintended lesson about American strength. One German officer later told the International Red Cross, "We expected to be starved. Instead, the Americans fed us better than our own army." This was the beginning of our education. That education deepened on board the Liberty ships that carried prisoners across the Atlantic. These ships were the backbone of American wartime production. At peak output, one was completed every 42 hours. They transported nearly 30,000 prisoners each month to camps in the United States. Naval records show that POW rations on these ships matched, and sometimes exceeded, what American sailors received. About 3,500 calories a day. Fresh bread, meat, vegetables, and coffee served with both sugar and milk. Refrigeration systems kept food fresh all the way across the ocean. And then there was the moment none of them ever forgot. The ice cream. Multiple ship logs confirmed that ice cream was served during Atlantic crossings. The USS General M.B. Stewart recorded serving ice cream on July 4th, 1943. The ship's machine produced 10 gallons at a time. For men who hadn't seen ice cream since before the war, getting a bowl of it in the middle of the Atlantic felt impossible. When the ships reached ports like Norfolk and Newport News, the shock only deepened. Nazi propaganda had described America as corrupt, chaotic, and weak. What the prisoners saw instead was overwhelming industrial power. Norfolk Naval Base alone covered more than 4,000 acres and moved more cargo each day than major German ports handled in a week. And at the port exchanges, small shops used by dock workers, German prisoners saw something that stayed with them forever. Shelves loaded with candy bars from Hershey, Mars, and Nestle. Procurement records from 1943 showed dozens of varieties, most selling for a standard price of 5 cents. The same price paid by families all across the country. When prisoners were moved inland by train, the surprises kept coming. They didn't ride in freight wagons or overcrowded cattle cars. They rode in regular passenger coaches. Dining cars served full meals on the way to camps across the American South, Midwest, and Great Plains. And with every mile, the idea of American weakness faded further from their minds. Records from July 1943 list meals that felt unreal to the German prisoners riding American trains. Fried chicken, fresh vegetables, slices of pie, and hot coffee served in real cups. Before long, they realized this wasn't a special menu designed to impress them. This was simply how American rail service operated. Once the prisoners reached a vast network of camps built across the United States, the surprises kept coming. These camps were constructed to meet Geneva Convention standards, but in many cases they exceeded them. Camp Crossville in Tennessee was a good example. It had electric lighting, hot water, proper toilets, and heated barracks. For men who had spent years in supply-starved conditions, these weren't just comforts. They were reminders of how differently the two nations lived. But nothing changed their thinking more than the camp exchanges. The PX stores. Army quartermaster records show shelves lined with items most German civilians hadn't seen in years. Multiple soft drink brands like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, and RC Cola. Rows of candy bars and sweets. Ice cream when refrigeration allowed. Tobacco, cigarettes, fresh fruit, small snacks, and even beer with a mild 3.2% alcohol content. Prisoners earned daily wages for labor, about 80 cents at first, eventually raised to a full $1. With candy bars and Coca-Cola priced at 5 cents each, a single day's work could buy 16 items. For Germans who grew up in a world where such products required ration coupons or personal connections, the sheer availability felt unreal. Coca-Cola became the symbol of America's industrial confidence. Company records show the United States produced 5 billion bottles of Coke in 1943 alone. The U.S. military had guaranteed that all service members worldwide could buy a bottle for 5 cents, and the logistics behind that promise were staggering. To the prisoners, it felt like Coca-Cola existed everywhere. Every camp received steady deliveries. Work crews saw vending machines at factories, gas stations, schools, and even in small-town shops. Americans of all ages drank it casually, sometimes leaving half-empty bottles behind without a second thought. What stunned the technically minded Germans was the consistency. Coca-Cola tasted identical, whether you opened a bottle in Maine or Texas. The system behind that uniform flavor, syrup produced in Atlanta, shipped nationwide, bottled locally with strict quality control, challenged their belief that American industry was chaotic and sloppy. Company archives confirm that many camps received weekly shipments of 200 to 300 cases, each case carrying 24 bottles. Camp Hearn in Texas alone went through roughly 7,000 bottles a week during the summer of 1943. Then there was the ice cream. To men who hadn't tasted ice cream since before the war, its presence in American camps felt almost like fiction. Yet Army records show it was served regularly in camps with good refrigeration throughout the summer months. The U.S. military treated ice cream as essential for morale, so essential that it even built specialized ice cream barges for Pacific Fleet. At Camp Shelby in Mississippi, the 4th of July celebration in 1943 featured ice cream made right on site. Prisoners watched kitchen crews hand-crank batches using ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavorings. The idea that Americans used ice in July and cream and sugar for what amounted to entertainment food left many Germans speechless. By 1944, electric ice cream machines were common in the larger camps. The flavors alone revealed the scope of American plenty: chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, butter pecan, and more. Prisoners could buy ice cream bars or sandwiches for 10 cents, or grab cups in various flavors. Procurement records show large camps ordering 50 to 100 gallons per week during the summer. Sugar made an even deeper impression. In Germany, sugar was rationed to about 280 grams per month when it was available at all. In American camps, it sat in open bowls on mess hall tables, free for anyone to scoop. Quartermaster logs from 1943 to 1945 list weekly deliveries of 100-pound bags of refined sugar. Camp bakeries use it generously, turning out cakes, cookies, and pies. Mess halls sweeten coffee, tea, and cereal without limits. One incident from Camp Aliceville, Alabama, stayed with many prisoners. In August 1943, humid weather caused several hundred pounds of sugar to harden, instead of steaming it loose and reusing it, as German kitchens would have done immediately. The American staff simply threw it out and ordered more. Prisoners working in the kitchen were visibly upset, unable to understand such waste. Chocolate told the same story. American companies like Hershey, Mars, and Nestle produced millions of bars each month despite wartime restrictions. The U.S. military alone bought 380 million pounds of chocolate products during the war. Camp exchanges stocked multiple varieties. Standard Hershey bars, ration chocolate, emergency bars, and popular commercial candy bars, usually priced between 5 and 10 cents. To German prisoners, the availability of chocolate, something that had vanished from German shelves, felt like another reminder that they were seeing a nation operating on a completely different level of resources. German prisoners soon realized that Americans didn't just have chocolate, they had choices. People picked their favorite brand the way others might choose a newspaper or a pair of shoes. Some liked Hershey, others preferred Mars, and many treated it as an everyday decision, not a luxury. It was a small detail, but to the prisoners, it said everything about American abundance. Monthly Red Cross parcels reinforced that impression. According to American Red Cross records, the standard package came with chocolate or candy bars, instant coffee, processed cheese, crackers, canned meat, soap, cigarettes, and writing materials. For German soldiers, these weren't just treats. They were luxuries that German civilians rarely saw even with ration coupons. In the camps, these parcels stacked on top of already generous regular meals, widening the gap between the American and German wartime experience. That first American Thanksgiving changed their perspective even more. In November 1943, German prisoners experienced a holiday meal that felt almost ceremonial in its scale. Thanksgiving was uniquely American, a celebration rooted in national identity rather than religion. Army records confirm that every prisoner camp served a full holiday menu: roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, sweet potatoes, vegetables, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, and plenty of coffee and milk. Feeding hundreds of thousands of POWs, the same meals served to millions of American soldiers required a level of organization they had never imagined. The message was unmistakable. America had enough food not only for its own people and its armies, but even for its captured enemies. The equality of treatment stood in complete opposition to Nazi ideology, which preached hierarchy and entitlement. Here, in an American camp, German prisoners ate the same turkey dinner as American troops. Then came Christmas. In December 1943, German POWs received something no one expected: gifts from American civilians. Church groups, charities, and families sent packages to camps all over the country. The American Friends Service Committee alone delivered 50,000 Christmas parcels to enemy prisoners that year. These boxes held homemade cookies, candy, books, games, cigarettes, toiletries, and writing materials. Local communities added even more. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, townspeople brought baked goods to camp. In Hearne, Texas, church groups delivered Christmas cookies and candy. Many Americans had sons, brothers, or husbands fighting overseas, yet they still showed compassion toward German prisoners. For the POWs, who had been taught that Americans were weak, greedy, or hateful, this kindness overturned everything. It showed strength through mercy, not through fear. As the war dragged on and American labor shortages grew, German prisoners were increasingly sent to work outside the camps. This gave them a front-row seat to American food production and to the scale of it. By 1944, more than 100,000 POWs worked in farming and food processing jobs. In Michigan orchards, they picked cherries destined for maraschino production, the bright red fruit placed on top of ice cream sundaes. Many were stunned that entire orchards were devoted to what they considered a luxury garnish. In canneries, they watched workers reject fruit for minor imperfections, tossing out produce that Germans would have eagerly eaten. Del Monte records from 1944 show that nearly 15% of fruit was discarded for being slightly undersized or lightly bruised. Most of it went to animal feed. Sugar beet farms in Colorado and Nebraska delivered an even greater shock. Mechanized harvesters processed acres in the time it would have taken German farmers days or weeks. Single American farms produced more sugar beets than full regions in Germany. Prisoners soon learned the scale. Between cane sugar and beet sugar, the United States produced about 7 million tons annually. Suddenly, the mountains of candy, desserts, and soft drinks they saw everywhere made sense. Near American schools, prisoners observed something else that impressed them: early versions of hot school lunches. Children received meals that included milk, vegetables, and protein. The National School Lunch Act would formalize the program in 1946, but wartime pilot programs were already in place. The milk program was especially striking. In Germany, milk had become scarce long before 1943. Yet here, even school children drank it daily as part of normal routine. To the prisoners, this said more about American prosperity than any statistic or speech. Many American schools gave children fresh milk every day. For the German prisoners who worked near those campuses, the logistics alone were astonishing. Delivering milk daily to thousands of schools required more coordination than Germany could manage even for its military supply lines. Some cafeterias even sold ice cream to students. The idea that children could buy frozen desserts at school, while German children struggled through shortages and rationing, left a deep mark on every POW who witnessed it. Their impressions grew stronger when minimum security prisoners were taken to local diners under guard. These small American restaurants, often no more than a counter and a row of stools, offered menus that would have qualified as fine dining in Germany. Yet here, anyone with a few coins could walk in and order. Price lists from 1944 show the scale of that accessibility. Hamburgers for 25 cents, Coca-Cola for 5, slices of pie for 15, ice cream sundaes for 25, and full dinner specials for as little as 65. What struck the prisoners was not only the affordability, but the equality. A factory machinist and a bank president sat side by side, eating the same meals, served by the same waitress, for the same price. It was everyday democracy, expressed through food. Access to American newspapers and magazines widened the contrast even more. Production statistics from 1944 painted a picture of industrial might that overwhelmed anything Germany had accomplished. Sugar, roughly 7 million tons chocolate and cocoa products, 380 million pounds purchased by the military alone, Coca-Cola, 5 billion bottles in 1943 ice cream, more than 500 million gallons milk, 119 billion pounds. Then they compared the numbers to Germany. Sugar ration, chocolate reserved for the military, soft drinks produced in tiny quantities, ice cream essentially gone, milk rationing so strict most families rarely saw it. American wartime production wasn't just higher, it surpassed German peacetime peaks. By late 1944, the situation reversed completely. Instead of receiving food parcels from home, German POWs in America were sending food to Germany. Using their camp wages, prisoners bought chocolate bars, instant coffee, canned meats, and other durable American foods to mail overseas. International Red Cross reports confirm that German POWs sent roughly 11 million packages home during their captivity. For German families who were starving in freedom, opening boxes filled with American goods from relatives held captive by the enemy was a shock that cut straight through Nazi propaganda. American rationing underscored the divide even more. Americans complained about receiving 2 pounds of sugar per person per month, more than triple the German allotment when it was available at all. American meat rationing offered 28 ounces per week, more than many Germans saw in a month. Even under restrictions, Americans consumed at levels Germans viewed as unattainable luxury. Price Administration records show that Americans still purchased about 74 pounds of sugar per capita in 1944, nearly 10 times the German figure. And sugar was only the beginning. German prisoners also discovered that Coca-Cola was just one part of a massive soft drink industry. Pepsi Cola, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, Orange Crush, and dozens of regional brands competed for customers across the country. The idea that multiple companies produced similar drinks and all had nationwide distribution contradicted everything they knew about a controlled, centralized wartime economy. Bottling plants operated in every major city. Many produced millions of bottles a year. The products reached every corner store, gas station, and roadside stand. By the end of the war, American soft drink production reached billions of bottles annually, dozens of bottles for every citizen. This single industry produced more than entire sectors of German consumer goods. Then came the final blow in 1945, as American forces moved deeper into Germany. POWs in the United States watched newsreels of GIs handing chocolate and gum to German children. The joy on those children's faces, receiving treats their own government could no longer supply, was devastating. American soldiers carried enough candy to give away freely, while Germany, which had promised glory and victory, had delivered only hunger and ruin. Footage of liberated concentration camps reinforced the contrast. American troops shared their rations with starving survivors, offering comfort and compassion even in the aftermath of unimaginable horror. The prisoners watching these images understood that the war had never been a contest of equals. One society had resources to feed the world. The other could barely feed itself. Between 1945 and 1946, German POWs began returning home. Many had gained significant weight during their captivity. Their families, weakened by years of shortages, had lost weight. Medical reports recorded that most POWs came home healthier than when they had been captured. This physical evidence, heavier prisoners returning to starving families, shattered any remaining belief in German propaganda. Many prisoners carried their final Red Cross packages back with them. They brought chocolate, coffee, canned goods, and small luxuries that became treasured family items in a country reduced to rubble. Many German prisoners had children back home who barely remembered the taste of chocolate. But inside American camps, those same fathers ate ice cream on a regular basis. When they finally returned home and handed their kids a Hershey bar, the symbolism hit harder than any political speech. As veterans settled back into daily life, many of them became surprising supporters of the Marshall Plan. They had seen American prosperity up close and understood something that most Germans never believed during the war. American abundance wasn't built on taking from others. It came from producing more than anyone else. These prisoners learned firsthand that the United States could afford to rebuild its former enemies simply because it was wealthy enough to do it. Their experiences shaped German attitudes in the years that followed. These men returned home with a new understanding of power. They had lived in a society that could waste food while fighting a global conflict, a society where luxury items like chocolate, Coca-Cola, and ice cream were made in quantities Germany couldn't match even in peacetime. That experience stayed with them. This new mental model influenced West Germany's recovery. Success would come from creation, not conquest. Prosperity would come from production, not plunder. Many of these former prisoners played real roles in rebuilding businesses, factories, and local governments. The so-called economic miracle of the 1950s didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built, in part, by men who had studied American methods while living behind barbed wire. Inside the camps, they had seen how mass production made everyday luxuries cheap. They noticed how standardization increased quality and lowered costs. They learned that when people could afford basic comfort, they were more stable, more optimistic, and more resistant to extremist politics. They had watched a democracy outperform an authoritarian state simply by producing more of everything and getting it to people faster. Many later admitted that these small lessons, learned through Coca-Cola bottles and ice cream cones, changed their entire worldview. They never forgot how different American factories were, how smoothly distribution networks ran, or how ordinary workers enjoyed consumer goods that only elite Germans ever saw before the war. Those lessons shaped a generation of German business leaders, engineers, and policymakers. This transformation isn't speculation. It's documented in military quartermaster files, International Red Cross records, corporate archives, including extensive Coca-Cola wartime production reports, POW letters that survived censorship, post-war interviews, and detailed academic research. Historian Arnold Kramer, widely considered the top authority on German POWs in America, dedicated years to studying this shift. His conclusion was simple. Food abundance did more to break Nazi ideology than any formal re-education program ever could. The numbers tell the story. Average German POW consumption in the U.S., 1943 to 1946. Daily calories, 3,300 to 3,600. Sugar, about 4 pounds a month. Meat, 32 ounces a week. Milk, 1 full quart available daily. Ice cream, served often during the summer. Soft drinks, unlimited, 5 cents each. German civilian rations during the same period. Daily calories, 1,200 to 1,500. Sugar, 280 grams a month when available. Meat, about 10.5 ounces a week, often unavailable. Placed side by side, the comparison is overwhelming. German civilians lived on starvation rations. German prisoners in America ate better than many Allied troops in Europe. And when these men returned home, heavier, healthier, and carrying American food in their suitcases, the contrast destroyed whatever remained of belief in German superiority. They brought back chocolate coffee, canned goods, and powdered drinks. To their families, these items felt like treasures. To the prisoners, they were reminders of how much America could produce without breaking a sweat. Those simple facts reshaped a nation. Milk in Germany was heavily rationed. Ice cream didn't exist. Soft drinks were nearly impossible to find. These weren't rumors or propaganda. They were documented facts. And that reality created one of the most unusual contrasts of the entire war. German prisoners living in the United States often ate better than their own families back home. Their daily meals, which were simple by American standards, still proved that the United States had enough abundance to feed its enemies without strain. This exposure to American food culture left a lasting mark on the men who survived it. When Coca-Cola returned to West Germany in 1949, it wasn't just a drink. It became a symbol of America's presence and a promise of economic partnership. Soon, ice cream shops modeled after American soda fountains started appearing in German cities. Candy bars, chewing gum, and bottled soft drinks turned into emblems of recovery. Many former POWs even became importers and distributors of American food products because they already understood how much people wanted them. They knew the appeal wasn't only flavor. It was the idea behind the products. They stood for prosperity, openness, and modern life. In the 1950s, Germany's first supermarkets appeared. The idea was pushed forward by former prisoners who had seen American grocery stores and realized that abundance wasn't only about producing goods. It was about making sure ordinary people could buy them easily. In post-war memoirs and interviews, German POWs repeatedly said the same thing. Food abundance had changed everything. One former Africa Corps officer put it plainly in a 1975 interview. "We expected a weak and divided America," he said. "Instead, we found a country that gave ice cream to its enemies. That was the moment we understood we had lost more than a war. We had lost our entire worldview." Another veteran interviewed in 1985 described his first bottle of Coca-Cola as like drinking the future. It was sweet, fizzy, unnecessary, and available to anyone for a nickel. That drink, he said, contained everything Nazi Germany wasn't. It was abundant, democratic, joyful. These testimonies, collected over decades, reveal that American abundance did something military defeat alone could never do. It broke the ideological walls these men had grown up with. They arrived believing in a superior Germany and a weak America. They left believing the opposite. Historians now consider the POW experience in the United States one of the most successful examples of re-education, not through lectures, but through observation. The prisoners watched the democratic society work smoothly while producing almost unimaginable amounts of food and consumer goods. They saw ordinary citizens treated with respect, and they saw enemies treated with dignity. That mattered because hunger and satisfaction are emotions every human understands. When they gained weight, grew healthier, and ate 3 regular meals a day, while their families starved back home, the comparison became impossible to ignore. Every cup of milk showed America's industrial strength. Every Coca-Cola bottle proved the power of standardization and nationwide distribution. Every bowl of ice cream showed that luxury could be for everyone, not just for elites. Over time, these stories passed from fathers to children. Many kids grew up hearing about American food in POW camps. Stories that sounded too good to be true. But as West Germany recovered and American products filled store shelves, those tales were confirmed. Entire families grew up believing in the idea of American plenty, and many of the children later studied or worked in the United States. They wanted to see the place their fathers had described as almost unreal. And when they arrived, they found it just as their fathers had said. Supermarkets full of variety, soda fountains serving sundaes, candy aisles with endless choices. Quick question for everyone watching. I want to know more about you. Tell me in the comments, which country and which city are you watching from? Your answers help this channel grow and reach more history lovers. Don't skip it. Drop your location below before you keep watching. This influence went far beyond personal nostalgia. West Germany's business culture changed because of these experiences. The focus on consumer abundance, product consistency, and democratic markets came directly from what many POWs observe in the United States. Germany's economic miracle wasn't only about rebuilding factories. It was about creating everyday comfort for ordinary citizens. Today, Germany has over 1,400 McDonald's restaurants. Coca-Cola is everywhere. Ice cream is an everyday treat, not a wartime dream. The transformation is complete, but the story behind it still matters. It shows that ideas can be defeated through abundance rather than deprivation, through kindness rather than cruelty, through demonstration rather than propaganda. The German prisoners who had once doubted America's strength discovered the country's greatest weapon, the ability to create so much that it could share with enemies without hesitation. For many, the moment of realization came through a simple experience. The first fizzing sip of Coca-Cola, the first cold spoonful of ice cream, the first bite of a Hershey bar. Those memories carried a weight that no lecture ever could. They realized they weren't just tasting food. They were tasting a different kind of society, one built on freedom, production, and possibility. By the time they returned home, the transformation was permanent. Men who had marched the Third Reich came back as believers in economic freedom and democratic abundance. They brought home a simple but revolutionary idea. Real strength comes from the capacity to create, not destroy. In the end, the Coca-Cola bottles and ice cream bowls served in American prison camps accomplished something armies could only help set the stage for. They changed hearts and minds. They proved that democracy's greatest victory wasn't on the battlefield, but in the dining halls where prisoners sat down to eat meals their families could only dream about. The men who once doubted American power became its most honest witnesses, and they carried home a truth that still echoes today. Sometimes freedom tastes like chocolate, and democracy fizzes like carbonation.